Welcome everybody again to another episode of the ideaXme show. I'm Andrea Macdonald, the founder of ideaXme. ideaXme is a global network, a podcast available in 40 countries worldwide, a creator series and mentor program. Our mission is to share knowledge of the future. Just over a week ago, NASA's Ingenuity Mars helicopter made history by making the first powered flight, controlled flight on another planet. I'm here with engineer who'll go through the details and bring us up to date on this project. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Loay Elbasyouni. I'm an electrical engineer specialized in electrical propulsion. I was part of the Mars helicopter team. I worked on the rotor team that developed the rotor system, and I was the lead electrical and power electronic engineer. To break it down, that's basically come down to like the motor. I developed the motor controller, and I work part of the motor and the servo controllers that control the propellers and the majority of the electrical system, like interfacing the wires all the way down to the computer. I also help assisting in the algorithm of the motor controller.
There were many challenges to overcome to try to, for example, recreate the Mars atmosphere on Earth. Can you talk us through that?
The NASA-JPL, there is a Mars chamber, which is basically they suck out the air out of it and they replace it with about CO2, which is, that's the air density on Mars. And that's where actually a lot of the tests actually have happened. The majority of the work actually happened based on simulation early on and calculation. Until we got to the model, we were able to actually build the aircraft.
The challenge was to get the aircraft as light as possible, as well as I think the propellers were much longer than would be proportionately normal on Earth. Can you take us through that?
Yes, so like the propeller actually they're like several times bigger. That's just to be able to create more lift in about 1% atmosphere, and also like they actually spin quite a bit faster. So they're about 5 times faster than what a propeller will spin on Earth, which is about 500 RPM. Mars is spinning about 2,500 RPM. So that actually creates its own challenges in terms of like when you're spinning a prop that fast, it actually start making the propeller actually kind of tear itself apart. So that propeller had to be super strong and super light.
There are also challenges of temperature. I believe that nearest the equator, the temperature in the summer on Mars is 20 degrees centigrade, if I'm remembering correctly, and near the pole, less than minus 100 centigrade. That presented challenges as well, didn't it?
Yeah, actually for the exact site that it was picked, which actually was one of the warmer sites during summer month. That's one of the reasons, like, the helicopter will be in history, it will reach its last mission. Is actually the temperature is during the high of the day is actually about 0 degrees centigrade, and the low of the day it could be as negative 30 centigrade. But most days we picked is probably about negative 100 degrees. So so like the original flight happened, I think it was measured about negative 80 degrees centigrade. So that actually presented a lot of challenges that we had to develop, because most electronic design for Earth, they don't not work below negative 40 degrees centigrade. So it's definitely created big challenges, like how can we meet this and especially make it lightweight, because we could not use like specialized space product. And so so that could actually have certain heater element that actually keep the electronic warm. For the part I worked on, is actually live in the Mars atmosphere. So the majority of the time is staying and surviving at negative 100 degrees C. And so that actually we had to like come up with a lot of different methods to actually validate that.
Can you take us through some of those methods? We don't just have lay people, people outside engineering listening to ideaXme. We have experts and engineers and scientists across the world. So I'm sure they will be interested in some of the technicalities.
Yeah, I'm limited in how much technicality because I'm not, I mean, I share only what's out in the public domain.
Uh-huh.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different methods just from my experience. I mean, working on other projects and my experience as an engineer, I mean, like there is thermal chambers, we can run things a lot colder. I mean, I mean, also like some of it come like from just studying like the electronics, because I mean, survive, most like storage temperature in any electronic, it go down to negative 55 degrees C. So there is nothing really documented by the supplier usually that goes below that. So, I mean, a lot of time we had to like, if you really want to run it below that, you actually could run some tests at storage and the method of the technology they're using. So, it's like, it's about thermodynamics. So like the way you shock something into temperature, as long as you do not shock it all at once, like, like then it will create like a high difference, like delta T in between one metal to another metal, or like a silicon to the metal, like, so that actually allow for the electronics actually to work better and actually less likely to get damaged from the temperature shock. And that's where really you have to really like worry about that. So like you have to validate this method through like actually putting the electronics in like temperature chamber.
What were the materials, if you're allowed to talk about it, was the Ingenuity helicopter made out of to make it so light, for example?
Yeah, so the helicopter is mainly made out of like carbon fiber. So I mean, it's the company at the time, like they actually made everything like almost was handmade. They're using carbon fiber sheets. But so I mean, that's really the main. That's the main, like the body is made out of. I mean, like it's practically like, and then like try to minimize any kind of hardware that will add weight. And that like every single component from the motor controller to the servos, to the flight computer, everything is actually was chosen in a way to be light.
You worked on the power electronics amongst many things on this project. Can you take us through the solar power engineering?
So, yeah, I did not work on the solar panel themselves, but I could, I mean, so the solar panel actually charged up like a battery, which is, something actually was chosen by the JPL NASA team. I mean, which is, usually solar panel, like, I mean, I had experience working on solar panel. You have to like control the solar panel output power from using like, what we call peak power tracking. So you track, the highest point of power to be able to get the maximum energy out of a solar cell. And so like you actually control the voltage and current out of the solar panel, and then you create a battery charger to charge that energy into a battery, like for example, a lithium ion battery.
Mars Ingenuity helicopter has made a number of flights, the last one of which was it actually took a photograph of the rover. Another flight is planned today, pretty imminently. What's the objective today?
So the objective is like the main objectives of the helicopter is actually, it's basically collecting flight data and be able to demonstrate flight. So to this point, I mean, it's considered to be met all its target, and it's actually exceeded what it originally was designed for. I mean, so far it's been successful in every single mission. Pictures is actually something extra. I mean, it's a really cool, like, to get like a bird's side view of the rover, which is something we never seen. I mean, I really hope that they get closer to the rover so we can get some cooler shots of like, bird type of view in the rover. Actually, right this minute, as we're talking, I mean, they're actually in the mission. They're probably downloading the data, or it's right now in the flight of the 4th mission. So, I look forward to seeing the data coming out, and there will be one more mission after this.
Take the audience through how the helicopter was actually delivered to Mars.
So the helicopter was actually embedded inside of the rover. So through the mechanisms basically in the belly of the rover. And the rover was part of like the rocket that actually took it to Mars. So like when it landed, it had, probably seen some of these video that, like basically came down in the atmosphere and, through the parachute system, so which is actually was like very shocking. So there was a lot of vibration and shock, that things we had to design the helicopter for. And and then actually the temperature reached about 1,000 degrees C, while like the the part coming through on the outside, So like when the rover landed, I mean, this is just one of the first challenges actually to be able to drop the helicopter. So they had to drop it down because it was attached. And then they had to drop it 2 legs at a time, and took several days to do that. And then the rover basically dropped it to the surface and drove off. And, I mean, several days later, that's when was the first flight.
I understand that there was a slight software glitch before the first flight.
Yes, I mean, like there was like a watchdog timer, like it's timed out, which is basically, like something in the software that, like when the transition from like the simulation mode to the flight mode, which is, I think that NASA, the JPL team worked really hard on solving it. And I was really worried. I was like, it's like, yeah, we made it to Mars, but I really wanted to fly, because I want to be like part of the team that could say we were the first team to fly, a helicopter on Mars. So I mean, which is basically historic. So yeah, so I mean, and it took some time, but I think they had a couple plans, and I think the first plan worked. So I mean, they still had a plan B. So, but I mean, this is basically what I know.
The distance from Earth to Mars is on average, I think, 140 million miles. It's an awfully long way away. And also, I mean, further exploration and habitation of Moon will be seen as a pit stop to exploring Mars further. What do you think the future holds in as far as next steps for Ingenuity and Mars exploration overall?
In terms of Ingenuity, I mean, it does have like one more flight mission. So that's, like you might see it pretty soon. I mean, maybe by the time you watch, because the video will probably be already out. So I mean, and after that, probably, it would be, just basically a piece of hardware sitting on the Mars surface. So I mean, the data will be utilized, to study like, flights in general in light atmosphere. I mean, which is, could help in development future helicopter could be sent to Mars. I mean, by NASA or by, possibly even other people. So that's a kind of help it from that perspective. So a helicopter could provide a lot more coverage, a lot faster, way of moving, because a rover is limited, get close to a cliff, you cannot really explore down the cliff. You cannot really, like, it have to be like dropped in the correct location. So I mean, that's a lot of areas where, like, a helicopter could help. I mean, you could send also a scout helicopter that could do pre-mapping for a rover in the future. That's another thing. But also, like, it could be sent on a lot of other planets. So I think at the current time, I think NASA's working on what they call the Clipper program, which is, I think, is something they're sending to to a moon called Titan. So I mean, that's like another, that's something else that actually the data could help with.
Do you have any plans to travel to any of these outer planets? The Moon, there was the Moon project recently launched. Any interest? I mean, I know applications have now closed, but before we started speaking in this interview offline, you mentioned the fact that as a kid and young adult, you were also an artist. So you do combine arts and science. Pity that you didn't apply, maybe. But are there any plans to actually try to get a space on one of these commercial flights?
I don't know, something, I mean, I think about it. I mean, I want to make sure I would be able to come back. So I mean, I wouldn't go on a one-way mission. Future one-way mission to Mars. I mean, I love our planet. I think our planet is blessed. I don't think to this point we discover anything near it. I mean, so I mean, I have huge love and respect for our Earth, and I think we should protect it any way possible. I mean, I think it'd be exciting to be able to go to visit the moon, or actually even go into like a space orbit, be able to see Earth through space. I mean, I imagine myself, one day maybe be able to do that.
So we've spoken about the Ingenuity helicopter's journey from Earth to Mars. Can we now talk about your journey, which is even more extraordinary in some respects, I think. Can you talk us through your journey to this point in time?
Actually, I was born in Germany. I mean, my dad used to be a medical school student in Germany, and I moved, and he actually finished school, the university, and he actually was working in Germany. He went back to Gaza, and we got stuck there for some reason or another. And yeah, so I mean, I was about 5.5 years, and I remember moving when I was first in Palestine. I was really shocked, by the environment, not the environment, more mainly by understanding what Israeli military occupation is. So I had to really live through that from young age. I mean, I was just kind of was a moment. I remember one day in my school year, or my first day in my school, all the kids from school, I mean, our first grade, running into this house, and I was wondering why all the kids running. I was I thought there was some lion on the street or something. I was why everybody's so scared? So I was so curious. I figured, I'd run after them, but I wasn't the first. I was the last. And then I was I kept my head sneaking out of the door to see what's out there, what's scaring these kids so much. And then I saw Israeli military jeep passing by, and I was why are they running? It's just some human in a military jeep, I thought the military is supposed to protect us. And then I grew up to discover, that, real life is a little bit different. I'm not a German anymore. I'm not actually a German, but, happen to be born there. And, so I went to elementary school in UNRWA school, which is United Nations Refugee Relief Agency Fund school. And I studied grade 1 through basically 9. And then I went to high school. So I mean, and I lived through the first Intifada, which was really that's the Palestinian uprising, and it was kind of really rough time because a lot of time we could not attend school because there were a lot of strike days, and there were a lot of curfews and school suspension, do one thing or another. So a lot of time I had to self-educate. I mean, and I was very at the time I was I always loved to do things with my hands. So I mean, I painted, I sculpt, I built, things. I mean, I always had, I always wanted almost everything. Everybody asked me, what do you really want? I mean, I wanted to be a pilot or aeronautic engineer, but at the same time, I wanted to be an architect. I wanted to be an agricultural engineer. I wanted to be, so I mean, I worked in everything. Anything I worked on, I did good, I think, I mean, I used to break down electronics. I used to fix everything is broken. I mean, I think I tore out TV part. I don't know, remember how old I was. I designed an antenna, and actually, I was designing antennas out of kitchenware and aluminum foil, since really young. I didn't even understand antenna theory, and I did my master's degree actually design an antenna for my master's. It's come down 20, 15 years later. So I mean, that's and from there, I mean, I studied English in Gaza, and I got the test I needed, and I applied for several universities, and I got accepted in actually a couple of universities. One of them offered me reduced tuition. I ended up only going there for one semester because they did not have electrical engineering program, and so I transferred to University of Kentucky. And my dad used to help me partially with the tuition, and but it was really expensive. So in 2000, year 2000, we had some difficulties, because this had the second uprising, and we had a lot of trees uprooted, and my dad lost a big part of his income. So then, he was I cannot help you anymore. So I couldn't figure out how to pay. And this basically told me this one week before, before my college started. And I was I had to basically I could not pay the tuition. I couldn't register. So I basically had to drop out. And so I continue. I was basically working. I used to work. I mean, when I first got to USA, I used to work between 80 to 100 hours a week. I used to work 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Subway, making sandwiches. And after that, I bought a car, and I started delivering pizza, and so and literally during that year from 2001 until 2002, I was working so hard. And then I was wait, I didn't come here to be a pizza delivery guy. I mean, I need to go back to school. So I was I went back, tried to get back to University of Kentucky at the time. It was really hard because I owed them some money. So I decided actually to transfer to another university, and I went to University of Louisville. And I studied there. I finished my bachelor from 2002 to 2004. And then I continued and did my master from 2004 to 2005. And after that, I kind of really got, started working as an engineer. So I worked on, actually, I always had really big, strong belief to change the environment, to change. And I believe something really strongly is like, we have to really be the change we want to see in the world. And I figure through engineering and changing science and creating different avenue for people, we can take people away from oil and other energy. So I focus really worked in, my first job basically was to develop, I actually worked in a tire monitoring system that actually changed the tire in heavy trucks and actually make the trucks 20% more efficient. And from that, then actually I went to work in electric vehicle. I was working with General Electric for a few years, and I was part of GE Motors, and so I did the power electronics for them, which basically designing the motor controllers and stuff like that. And from that, I was GE shut down that division. There was mainly industrial electric vehicle, and I kind of went into the mass electric vehicle market. We worked with several different startups. I mean, I moved to Boston, and then from Boston I moved to California. I worked for a couple companies here. And then 2012, that's we're most the electric vehicle company went out of business, with the exception for Tesla at the time. And I just didn't want to move to San Francisco. And and there was one electric vehicle electric vehicle charging company that had a UAV, electric airplane company division that actually had some hydrogen plane and solar plane. And I was like, oh, that'd be really cool to work on. So I applied there, and I got a job. I was, senior staff power electronic engineer. And 2014, we end up getting the NASA helicopter project. And at the time, believe it or not, see, most people don't know this fact, it was called Leonardo.
Ah.
Leonardo Da Vinci.
That is very interesting indeed. The organization that through which you worked in order to work on the Ingenuity helicopter project, I think was called AeroVironment.
Yes. I mean, I worked with them until mid 2018. That's when actually I finished with most of the helicopter, the electronics, flight hardware. And then we kind of pursued my career after that to grow. So right now I'm actually senior director of engineering. I work for a company called Astrodyne TDI. We are a power electronic company, so we do anything from motor controllers, power supplies. I mean, we serve almost every industry, including aerospace industry.
At this point in the interview, we ask our guests with whom they've connected richly with in order to move their careers forward. It's particularly apt for you, given your pretty grueling journey and hard work you've had to put in. It would be really interesting to know who has helped you along the way, maybe even beyond your professors. Who has emotionally supported you? Who has supported you outside the system, above and beyond what would be considered their responsibility?
I mean, the main person who influenced me on my great role model is actually my dad. I mean, my dad's my struggle is really nothing comparing to my dad. I mean, my dad born in 1948. He born in the war. He got injured when he was 7 days old. So I mean, and then he finished his high school during 1967 war. So and his high school was delayed by 2 years. He had to retake his his last final exams, and he worked in the groves trying to save his money to go study in Germany to be a doctor. And so I mean, that was really, and then he actually had to work. He used to work in the train station, just loading trains. And he always, I remember one story he used to tell me, he used to fall asleep in his autopsy class, and and the doctor was like, how can you keep getting you're getting full scores? I mean, you're getting the highest grade in the whole medical school, and you were falling asleep in my class. Come to me, I want to really know your story. So he told my dad, so my dad was like, oh, I just work I work all night, in the train station. I load the trains to be able to pay for my living. And so he actually wrote a letter to I'm not exactly sure. I think it's the prime minister or the chancellor at the time, Hessen, and you know, and then like what he got him a full ride scholarship, you know, like to finish his medical school. So I mean, to me, that was like that's my inspiration. So all through my career, I mean, like, you know, honestly, like a lot of time was a lot of it to do with myself. I had to really push the limit. I don't think I got, I mean, my dad definitely helped me financially at different points in different ways. And, you know, my mom and then like when I first was in college, I mean, somehow I ended up living in an apartment that actually was owned by a Palestinian. And I had an accident, car accident, and I couldn't even work at Deliver Pizza. And I stayed home for several months. And I literally didn't pay my rent for several months, like, you know, like 6 months. I mean, I could have ended up being homeless. And then when I went to my second university, I mean, the same thing happened. I ended up living with another guy who actually, he understood the situation, helped me out. My professor, a lot of them like supported me. I mean, in terms of like, I applied, I actually won a scholarship award in my, you know, my second year in University of Louisville. And, you know, I got some work study program also. I mean, but it's basically mainly my skills. I mean, one of the professor actually helped me in terms of financially. He actually helped me pay part of the tuition. You know, that Dr. Ibrahim Imam, or, you know, I mean, I consider him like my father. He helped me in many different ways. I mean, I was far away from my family, and when I get sick, I mean, he took care of me. I mean, also my friends. I mean, the thing is, like, sometimes, like, you know, you be a lot with the friends, like, we motivate each other. So my friend Mohammed Samna, he was very, like, you know, inspirational. Actually, he ended up transferring, coming to University of Louisville with me, and he also finished and graduated after he ran into a similar struggle. I mean, he could not. He was studying at NGIT, and which is New Jersey Institution of Technology, and the tuition got so high he could not afford it. You know, then he actually transferred to Louisville, and he finished from there too. So, I mean, it's hard to remember everyone, you know, but I mean, then my brother too. My brother Yasser helped me out. I mean, he was my youngest brother, and you know, I remember several months I could not pay my car payments, and you know, I mean, he's like, you know, he actually was sending me money to pay for my car. So it's a long journey.
And I bet you'll never forget these people who helped you get to
No,
this point.
no, I never forget, and I'm very thankful and grateful for every single one. And I like to mention their names, and you know, like, tell them that I'm really appreciate every single thing they have done for me.
What does the future hold? What do you want to do with the rest of your life? Again, offline, you mentioned that you really want to help create a better world. You're not just interested in high technology and engineering. You have broad interests, you're interested in art, but you also are driven by wanting to encourage people to connect and create a better world together.
So I do my social duty, just like, you know, I'm actually do a lot of like, you know, things like where I can help people in terms of, like, you know, share my experience, like speak to students, mentor students. That's just one thing. I mean, honestly, about my future, I mean, I always been an entrepreneur since young age. I mean, I probably had my first business when I was like 12 years old. I used to sell candy to the kids and in the neighborhood. You know, I mean, I almost, like, I used to trade in fruits when I was like 16. You know, I got a whole farm. So I mean, like, I always wanted to start my own company. So I mean, this is really can make a change. It's not really by just like ideas and talking, and you know, I mean, actually do that change. So I mean, I always wanted to start my own company. I mean, I attempted that several years back. I mean, I almost got funding back then, but you know, then, you know, with, you know, 2012 was, you know, things got really difficult in the alternative energy market, you know, in terms of funding. So, but I mean, I'll probably continue in that path. You know, I would actually, I am planning to start a company in the future. I mean, you know, so I mean, definitely will have to do with alternative mode of transportation. That's the way really I think about it, and alternative energy of some sort. So I mean, and that way, I believe we can change the world. I really believe in something Nikola Tesla said. You know, Nikola Tesla came in from a poor place in, like, in Serbia, yeah, and he always believed, and he always was strongly believing that he can change the world by providing everybody with power and electricity, because he thought power and electricity is going to provide them light, going to provide them jobs, going to, like, bring them out of poverty. And you know, to some degree, I mean, we can thank him for everything we have today. I mean, because I mean, he did a lot of innovation, But I don't think he succeeded in that. And I think there's a lot of places still do not have access to power. I mean, like continuously. I mean, it's, it's just kind of sad that, like even even we have power outages in the United States. I mean, I think there is a lot of work need to be done there. I mean, Gaza have a big problem. I mean, they have power shifts. You get 6 hour a day of power, depending what neighborhood you live on. So I mean, and I think like, I mean, for example, I mean, one thing I've been thinking about is like, if there's a way we could help. I mean, I would actually grow a company outside. It's going to be like a global company, but and in other ways I probably could help, like in, maybe help getting more power to Palestinian and people in remote places, or like just work in electric aviation, something like that.
One final question before we go. Could you provide some advice and inspiration for kids and students who are struggling away, maybe from poor backgrounds, or life is tough for them in a different way, to keep going?
So I say something really true, everything started with a dream. I mean, everything started with a painting. I mean, that painting right behind me right there, like this is my friend gave it to me. He called it Ingenuity Mars. And it doesn't have the helicopter on it, but he imagined there is music and a band playing on Mars, and there's a helicopter that's doing the laser show. So I think so like you always start with a dream. So first of all, you need to have a dream. You need to have imagination, even if they're unrealistic, and then you pursue this. I mean, just to give you an example, I mean, the Mars helicopter flying on Mars was a mission impossible, and from the impossible, by believing and dreaming about something is impossible, we're able to make it possible. So, I mean, I think that should like be the motive of anybody. I mean, that no matter where you are, no matter what do you do, I think you should have the right to dream, and then you should work on your dream and never give up. I mean, whatever avenue is going to take you to make whatever you dream is reality. I mean, nothing is impossible.
Loay Elbasyouni, lead on the NASA Mars Ingenuity helicopter. Thank you very much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you for moving the human story forward.
Thank you. It's really nice talking to you.
Thank you very much for being with us on this episode of the ideaXme show. Our mission is to move the human story forward by sharing knowledge of the future. You can find us across the internet on all the major audio podcasting networks at www.radioideaXme.com, YouTube and Vimeo. Please subscribe